Okay, welcome. Again, I'm substituting and I'm not sure for who. But when I was asked about this topic, I said, sure, I would love to take this topic. I work a lot with people and relationships, and I firmly believe that co-teacher relationships are the foundation, or one of the foundations, to a healthy learning environment. If you want to take everything else that you've been hearing and that's been taught, for you to make that accessible, for all that to actually work, you kind of have to have this. If you have an environment in your school where there's unhealthy co-teacher relations, all this other stuff kind of doesn't matter, because it's probably not going to work. So I see this as a very foundational topic. It's also a topic that I'm very passionate about. You can take the teacher out there and replace it just with interpersonal relationships. It doesn't matter whether it's in the family, whether it's at church, whether it's at school, whether it's at business. I do a lot of teaching in a business development environment. And human relationships really matters for the environment, for a healthy environment for us to learn in. So I find it interesting that this is on the slate. That leads me to believe that we should do this. That we should do a little assessment. Because if there's no need for this, and on a scale of 1 to 10, you're at a 10, we'll just dismiss and we'll go drink coffee. How does that sound? So let's do an assessment. On a scale of 1 to 10, does everybody have something to write on? Maybe even your phone or anything that you have to make a little note on. We're going to get a little practical here. So I'm going to ask a couple questions, and I want you to answer this and write a number down. All you're going to have to do is have a place to write a number down. Okay, here's the question. First, how many of you are teachers? Okay, most of you are teachers. This is predominantly for the teachers, but if you're not a teacher, just fill in whatever your function is and just follow along for the session, because teacher could be is a person, right? So it's interpersonal relationships. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to put down the number, 10 being really good and 1 being really bad. I want you to put the number of what your relationship is like with the other teachers in school. Any of you here the sole teacher in school? No? Are you? The only teacher in school? No. Okay. So everybody has co-teachers that they got to put up with, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, write down how good or bad your relationship is with your co-teachers. Okay? Write that number down. Okay? Now I'm going to ask this question the other way. And this matters because we often don't really think about this. So if this is you, and this is the other person, we have just written down what your number is to this person. But now let's do this number and fill this number in. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a relationship you think the other person has with you. See, that's a little different question. We're not quite so used to thinking in those terms.
It'd be hotter for me.
Well, let's see. So write down how on a scale of 1 to 10, is everybody understanding my question? So, yes.
So just like an average, because what if there's 5?
Yeah, an average, right. So I know there's that one that's really dragging it down, but we'll get to him or her soon. Okay, so by now you should have 2 numbers written down. You have 2 numbers written down? Okay, so we're just going to go around the room and we're going to practice a little vulnerability here. Because if you're not vulnerable, we can't really do good relations. So, Bethany, I'm going to pick on you because you're from hometown. So, give us your first number.
8.
And give us your second number. 8. Okay? Veronica.
9.
9, and 8. Okay?
8 and 9.
8 and 9.
I could substitute 8 and 9 for the first one and then
Okay.
8 for the second one.
Very good. I don't know all the names, so I'm just going to point at you and look at you and point at you.
8 for first and 7 and 7.
Okay?
5 and 4.
5 and 4.
8 and 8.
8 and 8.
8, 8. 8, 6.
Okay?
10, 10.
You work by yourself.
Yeah. Really, truly, I work with other people.
Okay, wonderful.
6, 4.
Okay. Did you write a number down?
Yeah, I was thinking about in your home.
Okay.
8, 8.
Okay.
I was dealing with earlier teacher, I got 10
Okay.
8 and 9.
8, 9.
7, 8.
7, 8.
8, 7.
8, 7.
10,
10, 10.
9.
9, 8. Were you grading your relationship with the teacher?
Yeah.
Seven, 8.
Okay.
10, 7.
Okay, interesting. There's not quite the relationship there of the second one always being higher than the first one like I typically expect when I do this exercise. But one, that tells me that you're being honest, because that is probably more the honest truth, right? Is that it is, if all the numbers, second numbers are always higher, then I say, well, you're all giving the benefit of the doubt, and then I dive in. It don't look like I'm going to have to do that exercise today, so that'll save us some time. So if we took the average here between the two, that's really what matters. So who had the lowest score? Was that you? Okay. So you, what was your numbers?
5, 4.
Okay, so we had 5 and 4, and then the highest was a 10 and a 10. Okay, so let's assume that where we want to go is a 10, and let's assume, just for the sake of conversation here, that the average of the group is 7. I don't know, it might have been higher than that, but let's just do this exercise. Let's assume that you're a 7. If this is your current position, this is where you want to go. This is your vision. This is your current position. Someone tell me what's missing. Your mission. You've been around me too long. Oh, how you're going to get to your vision, which is this here. This could also simply be called an outcome, and this could also just be called a plan. What I'm teaching with this is intentionality. We need to be intentional. If you're not intentional about your relationships and they're just happening, they tend to disintegrate over time because we face difficult things in life. And as we face difficult things in life, if we just let life happen we're not intentional about clearly knowing what we're striving for, understanding where we're at, creating a clear plan how to get there. I teach this little tool over and over and over. You can use this tool for anything that you want to do, but we're talking about relationships. You want to get to a 10, we're to 7, we're going to create a plan of how to get there. So let me ask you, for those of you that weren't at 10s, because we had a few 10s, for those of you that weren't at 10, how many of you have a written plan of how you're going to get to a 10? No one? Okay. If you don't have a written plan, you're probably not going to get there. So how many of you haven't a plan at all? Even unwritten? You got it? Okay. How much of you shared that plan with others? Anybody here that has a plan that's not written that you shared it with others? How can you hold a plan accountable if you don't share it? Accountability of a plan is paramount. So I wanted to give you that little tool because if you're not where you want to be, I want to give you a way to get there. Don't you just hate when you go to an event and they spend the entire time telling you what's wrong, and they tell you little tools like this of kind of theory of how to get the, but then you kind of leave the room and you're not sure of how to do anything tangible. I have a pet peeve with that kind of teaching. And so I try to be very intentional when I'm taking up your special time like today to give you something tangible. So I'm simply going to use the two tools that I teach over and over and over. The first one is the trust-based relational improvement by Patrick and Lencioni. How you get to the results that you want. This is a result. This is your current position, and this is the plan. In teaching this for many years, my observation has been is that most people can articulate this quite well. And second, they do kind of okay-ish with this. If they have done this well, they can kind of do okay-ish with this. Let me tell you what falls apart. Very few people are absolutely honest with this. Our current position. How things are actually. So, all of you wrote down a number of what the other person would say their relationship is like with you, right? So there's a way that you can find out what that number is. Harvard University put a lot of money into figuring out how to do this. And if you were in the previous session here, you know the answer. It's ask. Ask. They will tell you. There's been a lot of studies done. How many of you are familiar with the Briggs-Myers personality test? And there's 100 variations that have come out of that over the years. Some better, some worse. But most of those are based on a work of a psychologist, and my mind just went blank, I can't remember his name, but years ago, there was a team that did a lot of work on this, which is where that came out of. And here's what they discovered, is this number right here that you gave me is incredibly accurate. We could spend a week with you, with a professional psychologist, to make sure that we do the proper assessment to actually find out what that number is. And most times, if you were honest, now if you weren't honest, then no. But all I need is for you to be absolutely honest, and that number, you just know in your being what that number is. So I don't spend much time digging on deeper into that unless I have a problem. And unless this number is, so if Chester said it's a 10, and we ask his, this was his second number, and we ask his other co-teachers that he's working with, and they give us a 4. Do you see a problem? And by the way, I run into that often. And Chester might not even know it. He might not perceive that. Chester, have you asked them?
No, I haven't.
You should ask them, so see what it is.
Yeah, I will after this session's
Text me
over.
what it was then. And if it's not a 10, then you'll be smarter than what you were before, right? So it's okay if it's not a 10. The interesting thing is you should know. Finding out your true current position is paramount for you to know how to get to where you want to go. Why? Because you're going to create a plan, and if you build a ladder that the rungs start here, and this is a 40-foot ladder, and this is 20 foot, and you're standing right here, what happens? I call that the missing rung syndrome, right? So you build a plan from here to here, but you're a little bouncing jack down here, trying to climb, and you'll never get there because your plan doesn't start at the right place. I see this over and over and over. So we want to make sure that you clearly have identified where you started, where you want to go, and you're going to create a plan. Now, how many of you have ever tried to do a job with really poor tools? Right as I said that, a story, my own story comes to mind, and it was the time I tried to build a set of cabinets, and I'm not a cabinet maker, and I did not have the right set of tools, but I was hungry, and I needed work, and there was a family that was very kind to me and gave me work, and he's sitting in the audience. Chester. When we moved to Texas, I was looking for work, and he said, hey, I need a set of cabinets redone. They had completely taken apart a set of cabinets and put it in a storage hut, and they wanted me to take that back and put it back together. I should have never taken that job.
I'm glad you did.
I'm embarrassed.
No, you don't need to be embarrassed. We still live with them today. I enjoy them.
I didn't have the right tools. And Chester said, because I told him I don't have any tools. Well, he said he don't either, but he's got this. He's got a little table saw. And he, I think, had a jigsaw. And he had, I had a screw gun. I had a few little tools. And I attempted it. Let me tell you, it is not fun to try to do a job without the right tools. So I'm going to try to put 2 tools in your hand. Someone tell me I have till when. I'll make sure I pace myself here.
It's 2:25.
3:25. Oh, we got plenty of time. We can be able to drink coffee while. Okay, so Patrick and Gianni's team health pyramid. Can you see that okay? How many are familiar with this? How many of you have seen this before? Okay. It's interesting to me. We teach this in our sessions. I have probably taught this lesson 60 times in the last 24 months. And there's a team that I just taught it to earlier this week that has went through this probably 3 times with me in the past. And they said this time they saw something completely new that they didn't see before. And it intrigues me how much there is to unpack out of here, and how much you will get out of this is tends to be directly correlated to where you're at in your journey. So I'm not going to pretend to be able to teach you everything that's to unpack out of here. Instead, I'm going to tell you to write down in your notes a book that you should order and read if you do not have it. The name of the book, write this down, is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick and Gianni. It's not a very thick book. It is a great read and an incredibly helpful tool for mastering this. It gives you the context around it. So I'm going to try to take an entire book and unpack it to you just in a few minutes here. Everything starts with trust. Trust is the basis for every relationship. If you don't have trust, you're not going to have the results that you want. If you don't have trust, the rest of your plan is not going to work. I grew up with a dad that was a horse trainer, and I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the Beery horse training program. You have. That shows your age. Yeah, that shows your age. That was a big thing back in the day, but back in the day when you were young. It was almost going out of style till I came along. My dad was a certified trainer, horse trainer for the Beery model, and it all was based on trust. He would bring Mustangs out of the West. He lived in Illinois. He would bring Mustangs out of the West, and in about a week, he could have about any Mustang trained to where he could ride it. He could ride it around standing on its back. He could go do all kinds of trick at the auction ring and get money for those horses like nobody's business. He really understood Beery's method of trust first. Those horses would just become mellow in his hands. He could do whatever he wanted. The first thing he did though was train trust. Once that horse trusted him, everything else worked. Why do I bring this up? Because growing up, I can't tell you how often I heard my mom didn't like this, say, "You children are just like horses." And so Dad made sure that before he tried to train us other, that he had our trust. And I can testify that Dad spent a lot of time making sure that he had our trust. And I know for the most part he had mine. And I would say that when he did, it was probably on me. It was probably this second number here. But that matters. That trust has to be there. Doesn't that sound great? But how do we do trust building? I'm gonna save that for later. And I'm gonna tell you what the next step is. So now let's assume that we have built the trust, and that is probably not what you were expecting. The next step in getting to the results that we're looking for is healthy conflict. And by the way, if you've not done so already, draw this pyramid in your notes and put these in there so you have the record of this. Healthy conflict. When you think of conflict, how many of you just automatically think of healthy conflict? No, we think of negative, right? But what happens if you don't have healthy conflict? That's a concept that's probably the key to Patrick's work in this. And because of understanding the depth of this, in our company, one of our core values, one of our 5 core values is radical candor. It's just one of our core values. The scripture verse behind that is speaking the truth in love. How many times do we speak in love and we're fuzzy on the truth? Maybe not that we're lying, we just don't say it. We're not frank with the subject at hand. Or you might be, I say you because I'm that person, that I tend to just, it's all about being nice. And by the way, did you know nowhere in the scriptures does it talk about being nice? It talks about being kind. There's a difference. You might be one of those people that speaks the truth. It's you forget the love. You just say it like it is. The scripture says, speak the truth in love. The amount of time that you can waste by not having healthy conflict, you will find yourself playing games with each other. You'll find yourself politicking. You'll find yourself tiptoeing around the real issues. You'll find yourself not bringing true resolution. And if you don't have true resolution, you will not have true results. It's critical to understand what healthy conflict looks like. How many of you don't like conflict? Everybody? You do?
I mean, nothing in particular, but I mean, there's,
Bring it on.
right, I mean, unless I'm reading it wrong,
Do you like unhealthy conflict?
no,
No. But healthy conflict, you'll go for it.
you know.
Oh, okay, very good. Very good. This concept is a concept that you must learn if you want to master the art of good co-teacher relationships. If you are a 7 and you want to go to a 10, part of your plan has to include these tools that I'm giving you. And I'll unpack that a little more in a minute, but I want to give you the full picture before I do so. The third one is commitment. Once you've had healthy conflict and you've pulled through that, then and only then can you ask for commitment. If you haven't worked through the healthy conflict stage of it, and if I have a problem with, your name just slipped on me right now.
Right.
Brian, yes. If I have a problem with Brian, and I come to Brian, I'm like, yeah, Brian, how's your day going? Yeah, I wanted to come talk with you. Brian, I so appreciate our relationship. I really think you're a man of God. There's some things that I kind of like to talk about. I really respect the way you work with your family, and by the way you are at school in our co-teacher relationship. I really enjoy some of those times that we have together. I thought we should talk. Brian, I really would like to have a really good relationship with you. And by the way, you do so good at investing into this relationship. Why are you chuckling? I'm going nowhere. And how many times, and you have a half an hour conversation and you've said nothing, right? Well, what if I do this? Brian, you really upset me in the way that you talked to me this morning in that teacher session, I am not good with it. I'm very upset at you. Why don't you change the way you do that? What kind of conflict was that? Just with the tone of my voice, or how could you tell? How many of you agree with her? Go ahead and agree with her, because she's right. Now let's try some healthy conflict. Morning, Ryan. Hey, you know, in that meeting that we were this morning, you said something that made me feel real uncomfortable. I value our relationship too much to not talk about that. So the way you spoke to me, it really made me feel belittled. And it affected me in a way I don't know how to fully respond to that. I thought the best thing for me is to come talk about it. Maybe we can talk through that. I really want us to have a relationship of a 10, and that just did not feel good to me. You really made me feel belittled. I just wanted to bring that to your awareness. Maybe we can talk through this. What kind of conflict was that? Right?
It was healthy.
It was healthy. Was I in the best mode? Like, I didn't get through it yet. I'm still hurt. But who was the burden on in my last exercise of who needs to pick up the ball and move forward? Who was in the second exercise, the unhealthy conflict, whose fault was it? All yours. In the last exercise, I was asking you to engage with me to get to a better place. Together, we can work through this plan and we can get to a better place. How many times do we play the blame game instead of, and our plan is we're going to make sure the other person knows how horrible they're treating me and it's all on them. Blame is not a tool for conflict resolution. I have a conflict resolution article, I think Dwayne mentioned it, that you're welcome to pick up. I think we'll have it on the table. Did you mention I wasn't that in there? He was going to announce that.
Yeah.
So that's more geared for boards, but it applies here as well. Blame does not create the results that you're looking for. So once I've done the healthy commitment, so once I've done the healthy conflict, now watch what happens. I want to keep calling you Dwayne, Brian. Brian, you know, I care too much about our relationship to let it where it's at. Are you willing to interact with me to try to get this to a better place? Because I'd like to better understand what you were trying to say. I don't feel like I understood. And I would like for you to understand what I'm trying to say. I don't think you've understood. Could we take some time and go to coffee Thursday afternoon? We can? Mm-hmm. What did I just get out of him? A commitment. I don't care how small the commitment is, get a commitment. Okay, so now I show up at the coffee shop, I sit down, I get my cup of coffee, and Brian never showed up. Does that happen sometimes? Yeah, what am I thinking right then? Why are you chuckling? You see a real problem, right? I'm thinking all the wrong things. Don't assume. Again, engage the Harvard tool, which is what? Ask. And ask Brian. Text him, call him, say, hey Brian, I'm here waiting. Oh, what happened? Well, it was a snowy day and I ran into the ditch. I'm stuck here. Oh, great, I'll come pull you out. I've got full drive, so I'll come pull you out. But you see that if there's a commitment, now when you're cashing in on that commitment, be careful because this next piece is critical, accountability. You can only hold somebody accountable for something that they have previously committed to. Beware of holding people accountable for things that they have not committed to. Does that make sense? A powerful step that you don't want to miss. When I called Brian and said, Brian, what happened? We had an agreement that we were going to meet at the coffee shop at 3. he probably didn't feel called on the carpet at that point, unless he was being nasty to me and just not showing up and ignoring me. But if he's doing that, he probably was not going to answer my call either. So he answered the call, and look at how I worked through those assumptions. Assumptions create so many problems in relationships. Just don't do it. If you have a commitment, both ways hold each other accountable. Accountability is a part of the plan of how to get to the result. It must be. And there's two types of accountability. So I demonstrated the one already, which is I was holding Brian accountable. What would have been a better way for that to happen? Brian, you tell me.
Hold myself accountable.
And how would he have done that? Somebody else tell me how would
He would call you and tell you.
Yeah, he would have called me and say, hey, I just slid off into the ditch. I'm not going to be able to make it on time. I'm waiting on the wrecker to come pull me out. That's even better because now I knew before 3 o'clock, because he knew before 3 o'clock if he's going to be on time or not. Now I'm about 15 minutes later, after 3, and I've had 15 minutes of unproductive thought processes that I've had to work through and repent of. He was proactive. Voluntary accountability is a term I want you to write down. Voluntary accountability. But if you don't get it voluntarily, follow through from the other side. Don't just sit there and assume. Accountability needs to follow up if there was a commitment made. What are we building to? We're building to a 10 on relationships. I'm giving you a tool to work through here. If we follow that whole process, we are going to have results. You're going to have results. You are going to get to this if both sides have followed the process. You will have your 10 on your relationships. But before you think it's just that easy, let me show you something. What happens if we got to that last step and we were at a 7.5 and we wanted a 10? Or, I've even seen this happen. We ended up worse than where we started because he never answered my call. And so now I'm sitting there and I'm assuming, and I've got caught into my downward spiral. And so until I finally meet him in the grocery store a week later, I'm so upset at him, I can't even make eye contact with him. And he tries to figure out why I'm avoiding him. He just knows he slipped in the ditch, the wrecker pulled him out, he forgot to call me back, and now he feels the tension between us so thick. He don't know how to deal with that. And oh, by the way, he's in his own muck with other relationships, and so he don't know what to do about this, and so we just avoid each other. How many times do co-teachers meet in the hallway and ignore each other? If you were one of those teachers, I'm telling you, grab a hold of this and start working with it, because you're creating a detrimental environment that is keeping all these other tools that we're talking about in an event like this from working productively. You need to have, Patrick would say, from an 8 to a 10 on this for you to have a productive environment in your school. If you're below an 8, you've got serious work to do. So let's say we ended up at a 7.5 or we ended up at a 4. Now what do we do? So what a lot of people do naturally is they go one rung down back to accountability. Doesn't that seem kind of logical? Let's go one back and see what happened where that broke in accountability, and let's fix that and then go back up. Time out. That does not work. If that happens, here's what you need to do. You have to go all the way back down. How many of you have played Mother May I? You should play that as adults to remind you of this. If you didn't get there, you have to go all the way back and you have to start at trust. So you have to build trust. But pray tell, how do I build trust? For years I taught and I stopped at this point. And I could have missed some of the other tools that were in place to go to the next level. So I want to give you at least 2 trust builder exercises. If you can't build trust, if you can't master the art of building trust, then none of the rest of those tools matter of the pyramid. And you will not get to these kind of results. So the first one that I'm going to show you is the Johari window. And that's how it's spelled. And you can look this up online for yourself. This is not original with me. And I cannot remember the author's name, so I'm going to give credit to an unknown author. You can look it up for yourself. But I have found this little exercise to create a mental model for you that a lot of other exercises come out of. And that is this. So let me walk through this. These are the 4 quadrants. And we want to just create a mind map for you of how these 4 quadrants work. So the top left is information about yourself that you and others know. Very simple, right? So we can go through an exercise and we could say, in fact, let's do this. Let's choose 2 people. I'm sorry, what's your name? Abe? Let's choose Abe and someone else that you don't know here. You don't know Chester very well, do you? Okay, so let's use Abe and Chester. So Abe and Chester look at each other. Turn around, Abe. Look at Chester straight in the eye and ask him where he was born and where he currently lives.
Where were you born and where do you currently live?
I was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I presently live in Itasca, Texas.
Yeah, Chester, you look at him straight in the eye and ask him the same thing.
So where were you born, and where do you presently live?
I was born in Mexico and live in Brownsville, Texas.
Where in Mexico?
Campeche.
Okay, very good. So we just took something that was in one of those other boxes and moved it into the top left. So how uncomfortable was that? It was. Oh, it was a little bit. Okay. I got one a lot harder for you too. That'll make this one pale by comparison. Choose Brian. So, open self is just, see, now you know that about each other, right? So it's something that you know about yourself and others know about you. That's the open self. The hidden self is information that you know about yourself but others don't. That was you two's condition right before we did the exercise. We moved that from hidden self to open self. Blind self is information you don't know, but others know about you. Okay, right now there's information I know about you that you do not know about yourself. And it really bothers me. It's, if you would know it, you'd feel awkward. And I hope to make you blush when I tell you what it is. Your name tag is turned wrong. And now that's much better. You even blushed a little bit, I think. So it was information you didn't know about you, but all those that were looking at you knew. See? So we just took and put something from that box into the open self. So then the last one is unknown self, information about yourself that neither you nor others know. That's the toughest one. I'm not even sure quite how to expound on that one, because if you don't know and others don't know, who cares? But there's a lot of things inside of that. What motivates you? What drives you? So I'm going to ask you a question. Try to see if I can't make an example here. So in the first example, you felt a little bit uncomfortable by that. That caught me by surprise. That tells me that maybe you're just a little bit of a shy person. Did you know that about yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, so you knew that about yourself. Others maybe didn't know that about you, so we could say that that could have been in the hidden self. But now I'm going to ask another question that might be in that other box. Do you know why you're just a little bit shy? Can somebody else in here tell me why he's a little bit shy?
Well, he's a stranger here, for one thing.
Okay, you think that's the root of it though?
No.
No? So that might be something that, and sorry for it to be this way, but it's just me. So that might be something that neither you nor anybody else in here really knows, but we can observe, it's a little bit like the wind. We can feel it, but we can't see it. We can start asking questions around it. And maybe if we work together over coffee time, that was after Brian left and I met with you at coffee, then we can maybe discover that unknown self and we can put it up in that box. The key is, this is what we want to do. We want to take everything from those other three boxes as much as possible and put it into that box right there. I'm giving you a master tool of how to build trust. Start with the easy things like what's your name, where do you live, what's your favorite pet, and then take it to deeper things like why are you shy, right? And you could get a lot deeper, right? An exercise that we do at work that I would recommend that you would do that is a part of the Johari window is called the one thing. And so if you write this down, the one thing, that's the name of this exercise, I would like for you to actually go back to your school and do this with your co-teachers. In one of the next sessions where all the teachers are together, why everyone do this with everyone. If there's quite a few teachers, it'll take just a little while to do it, but it'll be well worth your time even if you have to cancel everything else that was on that meeting agenda. Go around and ask Brian, tell me one thing that you want me to start doing and one thing that you want me to stop doing. And everybody, ask that to everybody all the way around. And then whoever's facilitating the meeting at the end, make sure that everybody wrote down what everybody asked them to do. If there was 6 people in the room, you should have 5 things on your list to start and 5 things on your list to stop. And then you should verbally commit to those if you can. If you can't, tell them right there. And if you commit to that, then you should do what? Hold yourself accountable. If you don't hold yourself accountable, somebody else on the team should hold you accountable. So that one thing that you want to start doing or that one thing that you want to stop doing. And that's kind of an extension of the Johari window. It's one of the exercises that kind of helps it because you might have not known that. If I say, stop intimidating me, you didn't know you were. See, we took something out and put it into the open self.
Leland, this tends to make people feel very uncomfortable.
Oh, I love doing that.
Okay, so how do you make people feel comfortable so that you love it even more?
You start with the simple things. You start with the simple things. If you have such a tense environment in your school that you can cut it with a knife, then start with very soft things. In one meeting, just share some soft, easy background things about it. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? Now, if you're in a community where everybody knows that, choose something else. What's your favorite pet? And just start incorporating those kind of exercises and every meeting, take it to the next level of intensity. I've had groups that were so tense that it took 2 to 3 months to get them to where they were comfortable doing the one thing. I learned this the hard way. I went into a company in North Carolina, and I was doing this with a large team, and I'm going to teach them this. And I got to this exercise, the whole team froze, and the general manager of the company stood up and says, sorry, I know you're trying to help us, but that's off limits here. I'm like, never in my career have I faced this. Wow. And he's like, no, this is not safe. That was a year ago. In January, for the first time, they all participated, and all of them said that was the best company meeting they ever had. Amazing what happened.
So how did you get from one to the other?
1 month at a time, 1 meeting at a time. One little step. We incorporated the trust building exercises into every weekly meeting.
But if they were so afraid of this, why'd they ever have you back?
Well, in this case, they didn't have a choice. I bought the company. Shared experience. If you forget everything else, if you're wanting to build good relationships with core teachers, you have to have shared experience. And then last, but absolutely not least, make this a matter of prayer. May your relationships be anointed. Thank you for attending. Any questions or comments before you walk out the door?
Yes, what if I don't have anything that I can think of about my adult teacher that I appreciate? Should I try to find something?
There probably is something if you really are honest with yourself. We frequently run into that in this exercise where somebody says, well, I don't have one thing to tell them to stop doing. They could think of something to start doing, but it was, you could tell they're really playing it safe. I would really look internally and say, there is something I can go deeper. If I want a deeper, more meaningful relationship, then I'm going to have to get in that uncomfortable zone. And now, if there truly is, don't make up stories. Absolutely. But again, I'm giving you tools of how to go from 7 to 10, not how to go from 10 to 10. So keep that in mind as well. Yes.
Thanks for unpacking the book. I've read the book, and just anybody that hasn't, it's an easy read. It's not a book that's laborious to read. It's very fascinating, very easy to read. But thank you for unpacking it more. I appreciate that.
Very good. All right, you're dismissed.